Sonic the Hedgehog being a Japanese franchise has led to Sonic being quite prevalent in Japanese media. And for today's topic, one of those media is mangas, the Japanese equivalent to comic books, where books aren't colored and are usually larger. While Sonic isn't terribly popular in Japan, the franchise has still seen a few releases in the right-to-left format, even since its earlier days. But let's talk about every Sonic manga. I still don't know how to open a video. But first, today's video is sponsored by me. Do you like Sonic? God, I hope so. Do you like clothes? God, I really hope so. Well, if so, you should check out my clothing site called Extreme Gear. I make clothes of nondescript video game rodent characters due to the fact that most clothes based off said character are either mediocre or insanely expensive and limited. So combining my graphic design skills with my boyfriend's knowledge of Sonic clothing, together we made a clothing site of nondescript video game rodent characters. Please check it out, as this has been something I've been putting a lot of effort into recently, and also a decent amount of money. Please, I would appreciate it if you just gave it a look-see at least. But yeah, back to the actual video. Starting with the first of these mangas would be the Sonic the Hedgehog storybook. This was an adaptation of the Mega Drive game that was distributed with the Mega Drive Fan magazine. The plot of this series is just Sonic 1, and the development is probably predating the release of the game. It includes some older concepts that never made the cut. Sparkling Zone, Clockwork Zone, Sonic being in a band, and most importantly, Sonic being the mascot of a deceased pilot.
Who the fuck is this nigga, bro?
In case you don't know by now, the initial story for Sonic was the mascot of Pilot Henry, who due to his sharp technique was called Hedgehog, earned Sonic as a mascot on the back of his jacket. But during a test flight, Henry died and the jacket was given to his friend Chuck, who named the jacket Sonic the Hedgehog, who then gave the jacket to Henry's daughter, Meg, who later ends up in an accident in which Sonic himself leads Meg out of the explosion, saving her and disappearing from the jacket. While I think the manga is overall solid, the story about Sonic being a fairy is a tad odd. The manga has some neat character interactions, funny moments, decent art. Not really a fan of the way Sonic looks here though, something is very off about him. And since the story is literally just Sonic 1, it's also pretty solid. Next up is the Sonic the Hedgehog manga series by Shogakukan. This was a manga series about Sonic published on 7 different Shogakukan magazine lines. These particularly weren't all the same manga series, but for the most part they followed the same premise. They follow a young boy named Nicky from Hedgehog Town who's quite weak and wimpy, but amongst wishing to be stronger or braver, he turns into legendary hero Sonic the Hedgehog. Sadly though, the presumed police officer Dogman, no not that Dogman, this Dogman, turns out to be Dr. Eggman the whole time. So now, Eggman is trying to capture Sonic for his power. This series also continues with the fairy concept where Sonic appears occasionally to help out people. While I haven't read all of them due to not being able to find most of them translated, I've read a few from the Korokoro, Inshinese, and Sunese line, and they're all pretty solid. Still not a fan of Sonic being not only a fairy, but also basically fucking Spider-Man. But other than that, it's cute. It's a simple little kids manga and it's pretty entertaining. It even introduces some characters before their game appearances, mainly Charmy Bee and Amy Rose. This series also has its own unique cast of characters, mainly Nicky with his family, who are neat even if the mother doesn't seem to do much. And there's also Anton, who's the most generic bully character of all time, but I do like his design honestly. Overall, this is a cute manga. I like the art in most issues, mainly the Korokoro one, and it's just kind of adorable and silly. I enjoy it. Nothing special makes this a must-read, but I still recommend it. The next manga hasn't been translated at all though, so for the most of the synopsis I can give you guys is going to be based off of pictures. Sorry. The Sonic the Hedgehog 2 book is a manga meant to tie in with Sonic 2. Opposed to actually adapting it, this follows the same line of manga by Shogakukan, where Nicky is a young hedgehog boy who can transform into Sonic upon wishing to be stronger. In this manga, for some reason Nicky and Amy are in a jungle under Eggman's rule, until now Sonic must defeat the Doctor. This literally has nothing to do with the actual game itself, and I assume this is just something they had lying around and slapped Sonic 2 on it, because there's no way someone thought this would be a good as Sonic 2 manga. Other than that though, it's solid. More Shogakukan Sonic nonsense is fine by me. Another Sonic the Hedgehog 2 manga is the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 Mega Drive Kushiyoku Guidebook by Shogakukan. This includes a manga that details how Sonic got to West Side Island and how he met Tails. Of course, this one hasn't been translated either, so I can't give an entirely detailed synopsis, but overall it's a neat manga. In 2002, Sega saw fit to make a new Sonic manga in the Bizetsu Koro Comic Special Manga magazine by Shogakukan, called Dash and Spin Super Fast Sonic. Later in the coming years, Shogakukan will release the series in 2-volume collections. The entirety of Volume 1 has been scanned and uploaded, but Volume 2 is weirdly missing outside of a few issues, with the one included being the one that introduces Shadow. This series is weird. While I'm used to these mangas having a more comedic focus, with all of them just being silly hedgehog hijinks, Dash and Spin has the most absurd humor of them all. Sonic pissing, Shadow and Sonic having a delinquent off until they become friends and beat up Eggman, Eggman being extremely desperate. It's more weird humor, and while I'm not a fan of the art at all, definitely fits the vibe of the comic. This is arguably one of the more popular series too, considering that its entire first volume has been uploaded to the internet. You can find dubs of this thing on YouTube if you just search for it. Moving very forward into the future, we would get the Sonic the Hedgehog manga from Dengeki Nintendo DS Magazine. This was a manga series that ran from 2008 to 2012, where the series would loosely adapt stories from Sonic games of the time. Sonic World Adventure, Sonic and the Black Knight, Sonic Chronicles, Sonic Colors, and Sonic Generations would all get adapted. And I say loosely because while adapting the concepts, Sonic turns into a werehog and travels the world, Sonic saves aliens, Sonic meeting his past self, all the premise of the games, but the stories are usually just goofy hijinks. Some of these issues are possibly lost to media, or at least just haven't been scanned and uploaded to the internet, because 31 of the issues are just missing. Spooky. From what I've read of the manga series though, it's pretty neat. With these being loose adaptations, we even see things like Rouge and Big in Sonic Colors, and I enjoy them. I enjoy how these characters interact, especially Caliburn and Sonic in the Black Knight comics. It's really fucking funny. And also, I love the art in this series. It looks really good, combining Sonic's style seamlessly with a manga-based art style. And lastly, for one of the newer games in the franchise, Sonic Superstars actually got 2 mangas to tie into the game. One is the Sonic Superstars Start Book, which was given out to attendees at the Tokyo Game Show by Sega in-house. The manga details how Sonic and crew got to the North Star Islands and what the Avatar Emerald powers do. This also leads to the first cutscene in the game where we see Eggman, Fang, and working together along with Trip. And there's also an extra Yonkama manga strip that is just gags slightly related to the game, like Amy drinking Sonic while he's using the Water Emerald power, and Knuckles using Amy's Pico Pico hammer. No, that would actually be a cool concept for the game. There's even a Boo cameo in the manga, funnily enough. The next manga would be the one in the Koro Koro Comic Magazine by Shogakukan. Man, these guys love Sonic. This one is also a relatively silly manga, where while fighting Eggman, Sonic gets more invested in drinking coconut juice, Knuckles gets more concerned with making coconut juice, and Amy is more interested in taking selfies, while Tails is just confused. A little cute manga, but nothing special here. And that's all of them! Every Sonic the Hedgehog manga. And while that was definitely a fun read and look around, I do find it weird how comedic they got in the end. While the original series and even the storybook had an element of comedy, they still had an overlaying story, theme, etc. But once we got to Dash and Spin, they really lean into this comedic tone in all of them going forward, excluding like the Superstar Start book. I don't hate this though, as it makes these really fun reads, but it'd be awesome to see something more serious or story-driven with Sonic mangas in the future. I assume this is because we already have the IDW comics and those are getting translated over in Japan. I understand why they probably wouldn't want any overlap. But it would still be nice to see a manga Sonic series that took itself a little more seriously, or at least had an overlying theme and plot. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye now.